Welcome to Constructive Conversations, Building Canada Stories. I'm your host, George Affleck. Thanks for joining me as we dig into the foundations of Canada's construction industry, learning from leaders and pioneers in the business. Today, I'm joined by Domenic Mattina from Mattina Mechanical Limited, based in Hamilton, Ontario. Domenic has been president of the family-owned company for more than 20 years now, so we're going to hear how that happened and what the plans are for the future. Let's start the conversation now. Domenic, thanks so much for joining me today on Constructive Conversations. I want to find out what Mattina Mechanical does, and you have two business streams, general contracting and the mechanical side of things. Can you walk me through those sides of the company?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me today, George. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you and to talk about my business, which is one of my passions. And just to clarify, when you say general contracting in our industry, that is a different type of business line. We're a mechanical contractor. However, we do sometimes act as a general directly for clients, and that's part of it. So that's a minor clarification, where if the mechanical scope is the majority of the scope, we would typically take on the full scope of the project and act as a general contractor. And that happens from time to time, but that's not a regular occurrence as much as the mechanical contracting. And I'll kind of get into that in a little bit more detail now.
Sure.
And so we started in 1979. Well, my dad technically started the business in 1979. My brothers and I took over in 2001 as a second generation family-run business. And from 1979 to 2001, my dad ran a pretty stable, steady business, consistent with roughly the same type of work, consistent client base. And when we took over in 2001, we decided to use his existing business and use that as a foundation to build upon. And over the past 20 years, we've done that. We've grown at approximately 10% a year, if you prorate that over the last 20 years. So we've had some really good growth years. Some years it declined, but it typically works in steps, like most businesses, but consistent pattern moving forward. That trajectory we hope will continue. That's our plan for the next 3 to 5 year plan. And as we grow the business, we're using the foundation my dad started, but we're also building upon what we've done the last 20 years. And what we typically do and what we're working on, call it these days, is we're in the ICI industry. That's the institutional, commercial, industrial. That's the acronym known in the industry. And in the last number of years, we actually added the big R, which is high-rise residential, which we never really, if you're ICI, you're ICI. If you're residential, you're residential. But with this condo boom happening, and it doesn't seem to be going away, a lot of contractors in the ICI world have dabbled in the high-rise residential. And high-rise residential is more so, I think, a way to enter the residential market than strictly residential, because low-rise residential is a completely different market, completely different mindset. And in fact, even though a lot of the tradespeople have the similar licenses, but they're completely different mindset. And we've been working towards that and growing in all the sectors. So we're fairly diverse. And when I say that, we've been growing. A large part of our growth has been growing in healthcare. The last 10 years, we've also been growing in water and wastewater, and the institutional, which has always been part of our the institutional being education sector, also healthcare, but we've grown in the post-secondary education institution areas. So a lot of the local clients we've expanded on: McMaster University, Mohawk College, Brock, York University, to name a few. As we've grown, we've expanded. University of Guelph, and we tend to work and be more proactive in aligning ourselves with those clients as we've grown. A large part of our, sorry?
Yeah, no, it's because that kind of growth, first of all, and then you have all these different kinds of projects, different sectors. So you're niching in several niche areas. That must require a lot of workforce and scaling up. How do you manage your workforce with that kind of, especially in larger projects?
Thanks for asking on that question. The workforce we have, so I'll start off, we're in the skilled trades. So we directly employ licensed plumbers, pipe fitters, steam fitters, pipe welders. So we do all the pipe. And as a mechanical, we subcontract out sheet metal, we subcontract out controls, we subcontract out insulators, refrigeration technicians, because they all form the mechanical scope, which we more often not handle. So when it comes to the type of work, like I talked earlier, the type of work as you gain into larger, more complex projects, it does require a different skill set, a higher skill set, and that's why we've done it over time, and we've done it gradually. So as we've grown over time, we've also not grown in revenue, but we've also grown in our skill set, the people we hire and train, so that we can, we can enter new markets as needed. Because although I'd love to say we have the niche in this one particular area, I've always had the notion having a niche is a great, it's a great,
It's great for scaling. It's great for scaling, but it also limits you.
It does. So we've taken the diversified approach, and I think that's proven well for us, because in times when certain markets have gone down, we've scaled up. So, and one of those examples is food and beverage. The last 5 years, we've really scaled up in food and beverage. And food and beverage, unlike some of the other sectors, has different requirements, right? There's more stainless. There's you're working a lot of times directly for the owners. Very high demand, shutdown. So there are different nuances, but again, we tend to change, pivot accordingly, because in our business, if you're not changing, you're not able to grow, and you have to be able to change in order to grow the business. So change management is a big concept. I'm saying we it's not that we master it, but that's something that we speak to often.
Does that niche, that kind of, is that almost accidental though? I mean, when you start focusing on the restaurant or healthcare, or you've got all these different sectors, have they just evolved organically? Have you aggressively pursued them as a business? So, you know what? We're good at all these skill sets, and this sector really could require our skills. Or does somebody just called you, or there's been an RFP and you've kind of done it? Oh, okay, well, got the gig, and then somebody else hears you're good. And so it sort of happens organically. Which is it?
Well, that's another good question. And one thing is, we've never really chased our work. We don't advertise. So you won't see our trucks marked. The only advertising we ever do is to support a charity. And, if that comes with an ad placement, simply it's for whatever charitable donations. But we don't, our advertising and marketing budget is nil. However, we spend those resources in different ways. And most of our growth, if in fact all our growth over the last number of decades has been organic. So what I mean by that is we get the requests. And requests typically come directly from the owners, or call it the buyers of construction. And, in food and beverage, it's the Maple Leaf Foods, Maple Lodge, Ferrero Rocher, those companies that we work for. They have a project, they call on us. Another big way we get our work, or the calls we get on a regular basis, are from the general contractors. And general contractors we work with we work with all the local smaller Hamilton-based contractors, and we also work with all the larger GTA-based contractors. So some of our larger general contractors, we're able to grow with them in different types of projects versus the smaller. But we have different business units, and that growth typically comes when we work with a contractor, or if we work with a client and it was our first project and it might have been by request, and that general contractor has worked with us and has experienced how we work and how we manage our work. And they said, well, we ought to continue doing business. And then we just get the repeated requests to bid more work. So a lot of our work is based on bidding, and it's very competitive, but we've grown in the design build sector, and we've been able to invest a lot more resources and trying to perfect that type of business. Again, it's by request, but when you do it well enough, the requests tend to be repeated and tends to grow by the number of contractors or clients that are out there and see how you work and hear how you work, and they call on you. So that has been the history of how we've grown. As we look forward, we may be looking at more proactive growth. So we may be changing, and that's something we're talking about today. We haven't made any definitive decisions, but it's something that we're talking in terms of if we're going to continue to grow, we definitely have to grow in a more strategic way.
Yeah, because you've been around since '79, so that's a long time, 40 plus years. That's a huge achievement in business. And to potentially rely on the predictable ways you have been growing is quite often considered risky, don't you think?
Well, it's not so much risky, but I think as we continue to grow, we'll hit a plateau. And unless we do things different, then we may plateau, and that would be fine. But we have the ability to continue growing, and that we sit down as a management team and discuss at a higher level and what we want to do for the next 5 years. And we just finished our recent strategic plan for the next 3 to 5 years, and that's why there's going to be some major decisions and changes that come out of that, so that the next 10 years are going to be far different than the last 10 years.
It's surprising sometimes when talking to businesses that how few of them actually do strategic plans. They and especially marketing plans, they really rely on same old. So it's good that you're doing that. The past year, though, has been obviously a real challenge for everybody. What have you done to remain safe and abide by the rules and continue to run the company? It's been a challenge for everybody, but how have you done it?
Well, when COVID hit the world not long ago, we sat down and we essentially, with our management team and health and safety, a few other members, we started call it a COVID task force, where we met weekly. Eventually went to bi-weekly, but we continued to meet and implement stricter safety guidelines. So if you look at COVID in its first year, knock on wood, we never had any issues. We stayed safe. Our employees remained safe, and we were fortunate enough to be in the construction industry where it did not impact our ability to perform our work. So construction was deemed essential, and we actually grew in the year of COVID. And looking post-COVID, it looks like our growth will continue. And what I'm proud to say is that we haven't had any serious issues as it relates to health and safety. So that looks like what we've been doing it in a very good way, but that's not to say that's all we need to do. We will be core certified by the end of this year, and that's highest level of safety certification in the province of Ontario. So that's something we've been working on for the past 2 years, and we will have our core certification. Actually, it should be before the end of the year, but that'll be coming out, and then that'll just bring us to another level of health and safety, which I'd be.
It's so crucial these days, obviously, and to have a process where and to have a stamp of approval is a big, feather in your cap for sure. You've been with the company for 21 years, in your role. The company's been around since 1979. What are some of the things that you're most proud of with Mattina, that really stand out, and certainly in your 21 years ago? Yeah, I did that. We did that as a team. I'm really proud of that. What is one or two of those kinds of projects that really stand out for you?
Well, I've been here 21 years, but I worked as a summer student, call it, when I was in my early mid-teens, as a laborer. I worked as a laborer for my dad, learning the business from, call it the boots on the ground, so to speak. As I built my own career and decided to join the family business 21 years ago, I did it with the notion that I want to be able to apply my skill set. I want to be able to, use my siblings and their skill set, because we all contribute in different ways, even to this day, and be able to grow a family business. And for us, sky was the limit. And today it looks like it will continue because, you set the limits as you see fit. And where we're going today, we sit down, like we talked about strategic planning. We've been working with our facilitator for 8 years, going on 8 years. And we've just completed our second round of re-strategizing for the next 3 to 5 years. And when I look back, to answer your question on these 21 years, all of my experience, the team we have together, I would say the best sense of accomplishment I have is if I look at our history and our growth. It wasn't one particular project, because that project built on the next project, and that built on the next one. So we've built some major milestone projects. At the time when we got it, I remember we were kind of scratching our heads saying, can we really do a job this big? Because the job was probably bigger than we were. And I mean, the first one came about in 2003 when we did the 9-story Government of Canada federal building, headquarters in Hamilton. We built that, and that was, we nearly doubled in revenue that year. And, approximately a decade later, we're fortunate enough to partner on a joint venture with one of the Pan Am venues. And we actually did 2 Pan Am venues, the Milton Velodrome and the Tim Hortons Field. And again, that was another boost in our growth. And at that time, it really tested our ability. It tested our controls because it required a lot more resources, and we had to scale up very quickly. So that growth, I can't say one was better than the other. That continues to happen, and I suspect that will continue to happen.
The business of growing your business, that's the key to success in business. Domenic, thanks very much for joining me today on Constructive Conversations. It's been really interesting.
It was my pleasure. Appreciate it, George. Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm George Affleck. Thanks for joining me at Constructive Conversations, Building Canada Stories, where we dig into the foundations of Canada's construction industry, learning from leaders and pioneers in the business.